Martin Dugard is here. The book, Taking Paris, The Epic Battle for the City of Lights, is available now on Amazon. It chronicles the fall of Paris to the Nazis in 1940. And also Martin has, of course, written all those books with O'Reilly, all the Killing series, which has sold, I don't know, we're in our 11th installment now and sold millions of units. Yep. How did that relationship come about?
You know, back in 2008, 2009, when the economy had completely cratered, the book publishing world was cratering too, and I write history books, and people weren't buying history books then. And I got a call out of the blue from my agent. He said, "Can you be in New York in 2 days? I've got a client who wants to talk to you about a really good book idea." And I flew there, and that was Bill. And we made the deal then, and we've been working together ever since.
How does that process work? Because I've interviewed Bill a few times on that process, and you know, I always kind of thought he was kind of like Ty Pennington putting his name on a ratchet set for Sears, you know?
Yeah.
But when you drill down with Bill about whatever the subject is of that book that he's plugging, he knows all the nuts and bolts of it. He takes a deep dive into that. I thought it was him just sort of stamping his name on it. And I don't mean that in a pejorative way. I just mean he's a busy dude. And, you know, let Martin do all the heavy lifting. But how does that process work?
Well, first of all, people assume that I write him and he puts his name on him, just like you're saying, but it's a very 50-50 process. He comes up with a title. You know, usually he'll text me at like 2 a.m. or something like that.
Must be hard to work. Half the work's done.
That's it. And then we kind of just start with chapter 1, and we just kind of dive into it. I do all the research. I'll rough out a narrative draft. I'll send it to him. He'll kind of rework it in his voice. He'll edit. He'll ask for more, or he'll take stuff out, and then we just go chapter by chapter by chapter. We do everything on the phone. I mean, we do just a call 3 or 4 times a week, just to like literally go over it. He reads the words out loud. If they don't work from this, as he speaks, we just edit to make it roll off the tongue. And here we are. It's book 11. We're about to do book 12.
I've written a few books on the phone. And I'm now writing another book on the phone. I'm trying to think if I wrote 4 or 5 books on the phone. Maybe at least my last 4 books I write on the phone. And I don't think people really understand that it conversationally comes out better when you're over there. People think, well, you got to be in the same room. Well, no, you don't. You listen to it. You go read it back, read those last 5 pages or whatever it is, and you just hear it while you're alone. It gets a little muddy when you're reading it or even in the same room. I found it to be pretty liberating because A, you don't have to fly back and forth, but B, I think the book comes out more conversational.
I think so. I mean, to be honest, literally over the course of 12 years, I think I've been in the same physical location as Bill less than 10 times. And I think if we were in the same room trying to throw ideas at each other, it wouldn't work at all. But just the fact that he's got that gravitas to his voice. When he reads it, he knows how to read. He knows how to do the inflections. And if it doesn't work, we can fix it right then and there. Makes it work.
So let's talk about Taking Paris. I'm endlessly fascinated with World War II. We got the book here. Give us some of the highlights, lowlights, or the things we may not have known about that.
Well, when I really started writing the book, I was just going to write about the liberation of Paris. When Patton is about 300 miles away, and all of a sudden he kind of moves in, he sends his army in, and we liberate the city. But I found I couldn't write it without the context of knowing, how did Paris fall in the first place. So I had to go all the way back to May 1940 to tell that story. And I think the stuff that really came out for me was it wasn't big names that got it done. It wasn't, Patton sending his army in there. It was literally, the French resistance. It was an American spy named Virginia Hall. It was all these people working behind the scenes who largely were untrained militarily. They didn't have weapons. They just used their guile and their wits to subvert the Germans and ultimately take back the city.
What did Virginia Hall do?
She was
for those of us who have no idea.
Okay, yeah. No, it's interesting. She was an American woman she had shot off her leg in a hunting accident, so she had one leg, but she had a fake leg. She first signed on with the British to be part of their Special Operations Executive, which were their commandos that went in, starting in the early 1940s. And she worked behind the scenes, and she worked in Lyon, and she ran a whole spy network. Matter of fact, all the other SOE spies in France were rolled up at one point, and she was actually the only physical spy still in the country,
Wow.
and she never got caught. And she was Klaus Barbie of the SS. She was enemy number one for him. He couldn't wait to find her, and he never found her.
You would think an American woman with a fake leg would have a hard time hiding out.
Blending in.
Yeah, and
I know.
Paris under siege.
And she did it. I mean, that's a good spy, right?
amazing.
Yeah.
So if memory serves from watching the History Channel, France had this thing called the Maginot Line, and they had all these bunkers and railways, and it was kind of like the Great Wall of China. They thought we could stop everyone with this thing, but the Germans just flew right over it and sort of blitzkrieg their way in, and it was a line that was built sort of in a more conventional form, and the Germans really kind of caught everyone off guard with all their technology and their speed, you know.
Yeah, they went from one side. Well, first of all, the French weren't expecting it because the Maginot Line was supposed to stand forever. And France had one of the best armies in the world. I mean, I think they were considered on the par with the Germans for sure. You know, meanwhile, the U.S. Army was literally ranked 17th in the world behind Romania at that time. So when the Germans came in, you know, through the Ardennes Forest, which they were not supposed to be able to send tanks through because the roads were so narrow, it completely caught the French off guard. They began surrendering. They didn't fight back. The Germans went from one side of the country to another in a week. Then they kind of pivoted south and came to Paris. And it happened so quickly that the people of Paris just fled because they didn't really have time to get out in an orderly fashion. And literally millions of people ran out of the city. And sadly, because once the Germans took Paris, all those people had no place else to go. They had to turn around and go back home. And
I was going to say, where do you flee?
well, you go to the south of France, but then all of a sudden the Nazis take the south of
Right.
France. And the sad thing was these people, because they thought they weren't coming back, they literally were murdering their pets because they didn't want their pets running the street. And, you know, it was just really a horrible mass exodus of people.
You know, and you see everything with grainy black and white footage, but you had to realize in Paris in 1940, those are modern times. Like you have modern automobile, beautiful automobiles, you have shows, you have
Well, first, the height of culture, too. High
you have
civilization.
everything. Like it just be literally like this happening in San Francisco or New York City or something, like just the height of culture and the most modern of everything, at least that existed on the planet at the time. And here come the Germans, man.
Yeah, it was exactly like that too. And, you know, the day the Germans attacked was the start, it was a Friday, it was the start of a holiday weekend. And the people of Paris literally went to their country homes and acted as if nothing bad was ever going to happen to them. Even when the Germans got all the way to Dunkirk and they were still, they're pushing the British into the sea, people of Paris still hung out in the city. They were in the cafes, they were in the bars, they were living it up as if they were still not going to get, overwhelmed and occupied. And when it did happen, things went from bad to worse. All of a sudden, they didn't have food, they didn't have heating oil. The Germans began shooting people and sending people to death camps, and then it just, was 4 twisted and strange years.
Did they? So tell us about the French resistance. How did that form? And was it based on anything that existed previously, or was simply born out of the Germans occupying France?
Yeah, it was completely organic. They took their name, the Resistance, R-E-S-I-S-T-A-N-T-S, the individual person resistant, from French Huguenots from a century earlier. But there was no history of resistance within Paris, and so it wasn't soldiers. It actually mostly wasn't young men. It was college students, college professors, a lot of women. And
Can you imagine college professors today? They'd all be just like, please have sex with my wife, I'm with you. Where are the Jews? You need any help rounding anyone up? Let me use one of my bracelets like a lasso. I'll capture some Jews.
I, for one, worship our new alien overlords.
Yes, I've been waiting for this, finally. Freedom. Yeah, fucking college professors today. Oh, could you imagine?
Yeah. But it wasn't, it was crazy. You had these people who, again, had never been militarily trained. They didn't know how to be spies. And they learned how to operate with their wits. And hide down, pilots and take pictures of troop movements and all these things to quietly undermine the Germans. And of course, they paid the price. Most of them were caught. Most of them were either sent to a prison for solitary confinement, years of torture, or they were sent up to a death camp.
How many, you always hear about the French resistance or the French underground or whatever. Does anyone ever get an idea, like, what kind of numbers are we talking about? Like, I can't, in movies, it's 13, people with nothing, armed with their cunning,
Right.
But was it thousands?
It was thousands, but it was one of those things where you couldn't get an accurate number because after the war, during the war, a lot of people were just afraid, so they didn't do anything. After the war, everybody claimed to have been part of the resistance.
They all went to Woodstock.
That makes perfect sense, right? So the resistance, and they're pretty crucial because they're feeding a lot of information to the Allied forces through the resistance. But would you say a lion's share of them were put to their death or captured?
I'd say about 80% because
Wow.
because it was very advantageous for, even the book celebrates the French people who did heroic things, but it doesn't talk about all the people who worked with the Germans to rat on their neighbor. And if they saw suspicious things, they would want to get extra food. So they'd tell the Germans, I think my neighbor's a spy. And so all these people would just be taken away in the dead of night. And one of the characters in the book is betrayed by a Catholic priest. And she trusts him because he's a priest. And it turns out all these people who are going into the confessional to say to the priest, hey, I'm working for the resistance. He's going straight to the Germans and saying he was breaking his vow as a priest. He's telling the Germans what's going on. This woman is ultimately betrayed, and she's shipped off to Ravensbrück, which is the death camp outside of Berlin.
It's so funny. I was just laughing with Mike August because we always talk about this fucking woke culture. And my thing is like, it's not really, I'm interested in the people who rat out everyone in the woke culture. Like, oh, somebody sent me this text. I'm going to share it with TMZ. Like, who the fuck are these people? And I said, if Anne Frank was trying to hide out amongst these pussies in this woke culture, she wouldn't have got one page into her diary. It would have been like entry number 1, Dear Diary, and then you just see a pen slide across it because somebody would have dropped a dime on her in 10 seconds in this new woke culture. But yeah, I mean, humans are humans. We have the same instincts. People were scared to death probably just thinking they were going to make it. Well, at the time, they probably thought, you better get used to the Germans because they're going to win this war.
Right.
I mean, there was nothing to indicate that they weren't going to win the war in 1940 in Paris.
No, they were unstoppable. And if you think about it, after they took France and they got the Low Countries as well, they pretty much controlled every part of Europe except for Spain and Portugal, and Mussolini had Italy, but they controlled everything. And there was no reason to think that they were going to be ever defeated, until they started fighting the Russians on the Eastern Front. I don't want to go too much in the weeds with it, but Germany had the entire continent of Europe on lockdown, and they had enough men, they had enough material, they had enough munitions to have, held on to it for a much longer time than they did.
Were those all just bad decisions by Hitler in terms of two things? One is we're fighting a war and we're also running a campaign to exterminate Jews. Like, we're putting considerable amount of time and effort and whatever into this other side project we have over here in the middle.
Are you saying Hitler was working harder, not smarter?
Yes, there's that. Number one, and then number two, going over to Russia and being decimated when the winter blew in and not really being able to estimate the Russians. Was there a path where if Hitler had kind of stepped aside and let some of the generals do a little more strategic type of thinking where they could have won or at least held on to it for a decade?
Yeah, I definitely think that if they had not invaded Russia, that was just a stupid mistake. In the losses there, in the millions on both sides, but it's such a vast front, and if he had just hung on to Europe, kept his alliance with the Russians, and he could have invaded Britain. Britain would have been speaking German by 1942.
Yeah, so, sorry. Obviously, the problem with Britain is once you get into Paris or once you get into France, then you can launch aircraft that'll just go over the channel and get to you. So, it's funny. The whole war was sort of about, we got these new things called airplanes, and they're awesome because they drop firebombs and they blow everything up and they burn everything down. It's a great piece of technology, but the range is a little bit limited, and we need to take territory so we can gas up these planes and go there and back. Just like in the Pacific campaign, we needed to capture islands so we could get to the mainland of Japan. We couldn't get there. I mean, we had aircraft carriers, but we didn't. If we could get a landing base in one of these islands, Guadalcanal, along the path, then we could make it. So now you take France, and now England is screwed because they can be had. They're in range now.
Right, and this is, and I made Churchill one of the main characters in the book. Even just because I wanted to write about Churchill, I didn't know anything about him, so I wanted to really be able to do the deep dive on him. And he did a really interesting thing when. All those heroic speeches you hear on, we'll fight on the beaches, we'll do. Those weren't really aimed at the British people. They were aimed at Adolf Hitler. And he kept poking at Hitler, basically trying to say, come get us, come after us. And Hitler shifted if he had kept trying to just bomb the airfields and the munitions factories, he would have been fine, but he got so upset he started bombing the cities instead. And that's where the British kind of wheeled around and were able to really stand up and gain resolve as a people, but also the fighter pilots and the bomber pilots got much better because they were defending their own people, their own families in London.
Yeah, so once again, strategically not good because they poked at Hitler's ego, and he should have been going after the radar towers, should have been going after the airfields, should have been going after strategic targets instead of the moms and the kids hiding in the tube. No, strategically, and then turn the resolve of the people because he brought it to the city, right?
Yeah, and you see these videos of the British people. Churchill was a complete political washout, a complete failure before the war, but because he galvanized the people, once they got really going, they became very, very tough, and they could endure almost anything. And again, you're bombing the cities, you're bombing people's homes, and it could happen. It was random. It could happen at any time.
Yeah, and the British pilots who probably didn't have a lot of seat time in Spitfires and other fighter aircraft, because you got to realize these guys are 19,
right.
I mean, I got nephews that are older than 19. They're not fit to work a donut cart at the strip mall. I say that with love.
Sure.
But what I'm saying is something like a Spitfire is a difficult plane to fly, and you got to go fight these experienced, battle-hardened pilots who have been, they got a lot of seat time in their Messerschmitts and Stukas and things like that because they've taken over Europe, and now you got to go do the battle over the channel with these guys, and so they got a chance to get up to speed is what you're saying.
Real quickly, it's interesting. It's a good point because a lot of the German pilots were trained during the Spanish Civil War, which had been in 1935, 1936, so they had a lot of time to prepare. These were veteran pilots, and like I said, the Spitfire and the Hurricane pilots, they were young kids. They flew like 3 or 4 sorties a day, and then they would go to the pub and they wake up in the morning and do it all over again. And these guys, the losses early on were tremendous as far as these rookie fighter pilots getting shot down, but then they kind of figured it out, and the Focke-Wulf and the Messerschmitt were vastly inferior to the Spitfire and the Hurricane. And once they learned how to actually use the Spitfire like that, it's a beautiful airplane, and they were able to kind of retake control of the skies. They never really had the bomber power early in the war. I'm sorry, I'm really going into the weeds with this, but let's just say that the Spitfire guys got really good.
Gina, you had a question?
Yeah, a couple questions if you don't mind. When I think about this, I don't know if you read the book or saw the series The Man in the High Castle. What the idea is basically, what if Hitler did win and Japan did win and they divided up the United States, the East Coast and the West Coast, and people like it's in a science fiction genre, but you, who is a historian, could you sort of see that still even in reality, like in our future in some way? Because it's so hard for us to wrap our heads around.
That's a good point. I think, back during World War II, I don't think it could have happened. I don't think you can take America. We're such a big country.
We're far away from that part of the world.
We're like, you can't. It would be hard to invade us. You could hit us with missiles, but you couldn't really destroy the population base. But I think that if the Germans had been smarter, they would still be ruling Europe. They just didn't. They thought about this 1,000-year empire, but they really didn't, live it out as if that was supposed to be that way.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, but I was just going to say we're lucky. Like you said, go back to the fact that we have an ocean on either side of us. We're thousands of miles away from we're friends with the Canadians.
Right.
The Mexicans are arguably our friend or our foe. But I'm just saying we're hard to invade. And I think that because we have this really rugged topography between the East and the West Coast, we would be very hard for someone to be
a one-legged spy. So I guess there's two ways to be a spy. You can hide in plain sight, have a cover, work at a bakery or something. And this gal sounds like maybe she went full covert ops because she seemed pretty recognizable and she seemed like she was on everyone's radar.
I don't want to give the Nazis too much credit, but I still don't know how they couldn't figure out that this woman with this recognizable limp and an American accent was not a spy. But then she did something really amazing. So the British pulled her out after 18 months, and because her identity had become known, just as she was getting pulled out, they put her picture everywhere. So they weren't going to put her back in, and they used her as a training officer. But when the Americans entered the war, she switched over from the British SOE to the American OSS, which was the precursor of the CIA, and she went back in just before D-Day. But she completely changed her appearance because she was known for the limp. She gained weight. She affected the look of a very old woman. She had all of her teeth filed down, and she
cut off the other leg.
yeah. So
Badass.
I mean, she was completely badass.
Wow.
Really something.
Seems like there should be a feature.
That's what I'm looking for. Her life has to have been optioned by
Angelina
now.
Jolie has to have read a book on her. Something's got to be optioned, right?
She's listening right now. Yeah.
So what was her fate, by the way? Did she live, until... The thing that always amazes me, I'm sure you have the answer, but I mean, it's always funny when you read about these people and then they go, oh, he died in 1989. It's like, oh, they were around. They had an Apple. The grandkid had a video game.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
No, and two of the women, like Germaine Tillion, who was one of the resistance who was sent off to Ravensbrück, she survived the war and she lived to be 100, and she's buried in the Pantheon right now. She was one of the early resistance. Virginia Hall.
I mean, so she died in the 80s or the 90s even?
She died in 2007.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like you're living.
She had a smartphone.
Yeah.
Yes, she had a smartphone. I mean that you've lived long enough to see Messerschmitts and hurricanes do battle over your land, and now you've got a Game Boy, and you've heard about Caitlyn Jenner.
I think CNN anyway, it says she died in 82.
Yeah, the Virginia Hall did.
Yeah.
So after the war, arguably the best spy in the war, wanted by the Nazis, hunted like a criminal. She comes home and OSS becomes the CIA, and they give her a desk job in Langley, and she retires, I think, in 1965, but they never put her out in the field again. Because she was a woman, they just gave her just this shit job in an office and kept her there for the rest of her career.
Yeah.
It's a fine how do you do.
I know. Well, it's also, everything's too dangerous for women until the shit goes down. You need the women. And then once the shit clears up, now you got to go to the cubicle because it's too dangerous for you out in the field.
Do you know what the name of her prosthetic leg was that she named it?
It was at Herb. No, not
Close.
Yeah.
It says Cuthbert.
Cuthbert. So when she was escaping the first time over the Pyrenees, she literally climbed up and over the Pyrenees, carrying a radio set on her shoulder. And
With the one leg?
With the one leg.
Wow.
300-foot drop-offs, snow drifts, and she telegraphed back to London from one night when she was sleeping out, and she said, Cuthbert is getting very dangerous. And they said, well, then just eliminate Cuthbert. They did not know it was they thought it was a person, that there was another spy. And I always liked that, just the idea that she was so ballsy. I love the fact that she could do that.
She had chutzpah and futzpah, which is a term for one-legged spy, a Yiddish term for a one-legged spy, futzpah. Did you know that? Did they go over that in synagogue?
I'm very embarrassed.
No.
I went to Hebrew school from preschool to high school. I never heard
futzpah. The one-legged spy.
They failed me.
There was a movie. Came out last year.
What?
Called A Call to Spy. It looks like a pretty small movie. 72% of Rotten Tomatoes. And fortunately, it can be purchased online, Amazon, all those places, but you have to subscribe to either Showtime or it looks like Fubo. So it's available, but you got to be a subscriber to certain services.
Wow.
I'm
That's
kind of
pretty cool.
curious.
So what if it wasn't for the French resistance? How would that have gone over there?
It wasn't really. I mean, the resistance did their job, but the driving force was de Gaulle. Charles de Gaulle. He was a French general. When the French government quit, when they said we're done and they surrendered, he smuggled himself into England and he made friends with Churchill. Churchill gave him the funding and access to the BBC to protest a message of rallying the French people. And despite the fact de Gaulle had no money, he wasn't in charge of the country. He just made himself the charge of the country. But he rallied the French people, and it built that groundswell of support against the Germans and against the Vichy government, which was the occupying government, so that when Paris finally did in triumph, it made himself the head of France.
That's kind of interesting because you just see him triumphantly heading down the Champs-Elysees or into the Arc de Triomphe or whatever, and you go, oh, he conquered them. He was like MacArthur returning to the Philippines. Or
you know what's interesting about him?
He
was tall. He was like 6'3". They made fun of him because the British press made fun of him because he had kind of hips like a woman, and they used that term openly, not in a very pejorative fashion. But when he came into Paris, on August 25th, 1944, and he's walking down the Arc de Triomphe and later going into Mass in Notre Dame, there were snipers firing at him the whole time. I mean, he was taking shots, and everybody else around him was ducking, and he made it a point to just keep standing tall just to show that he was unafraid, which I thought was pretty cool.
Those were German snipers left behind?
Just a few holdover Germans who were still hiding, had not been able to get out of the city. So, that's what you do. You're stuck in a city. Your army has escaped. What you do is, instead of hiding and trying to smuggle yourself out, you just start shooting again so nobody can find you.
Those crazy Germans. How long after de Gaulle returns? I'm trying to figure out the timeline of Hitler and suicide and de Gaulle.
About 11 months. Hitler. That's late April 1945. De Gaulle comes in August 1944. So I think 9 months, something like that, 11 months.
Right. So from that point on, the writing was on the wall pretty much for Hitler, especially what's going on with Russia, right?
Everybody thought, because by that time the Russians were almost in Berlin. I mean, they were racing towards Berlin, and everybody thought the war was over. Everybody took it for granted that once Paris fell, that the war was going to be over, and that we would be in Berlin within a couple weeks, and the Russians would be in, and then then the winter sets in, and we have the Battle of the Bulge, and everything kind of just snowballed. And the Germans fought a very valiant and bitter struggle to not fail, but in the end, they were just overwhelmed.
How much communication? I've never really thought about this, but it was kind of insane that there were two world wars essentially going on simultaneously. That the Japanese and the Pacific the campaign, and then you got the European campaign. We, unfortunately, were fighting in both those campaigns, and so were a lot of other countries. And you hear a lot about Hitler, and then you hear a lot about Japan, but I don't hear about a lot of communication between the two. Like, it would make sense they get on the same page.
The enemy of my enemy.
On the other hand, was Hitler then going to win World War II and then take on Japan after they won? Or like, was he rooting against Japan? Like, hey, America just vanquished Japan, but leave us alone in Europe? Or did he like the idea that they had to use a considerable amount of time and energy to deal with the Pacific front? Like, what was that like?
That's actually a really great question. I've never heard it posed that way. There was little communication other than just embassy stuff between the Japanese and the Germans. And, for instance, with the West, you saw FDR and Roosevelt and Stalin and Churchill gathering for various conferences to show United Front. You never see a picture of, Hirohito with Hitler. Didn't happen.
Yeah, there's Allied, us, Axis is them, but I mean, we're called allies. Like, we're getting together and, safety in numbers. Like, it makes sense that we all get our, take all our military and sort of resources and put them together and see where they're best used. But it would have been, I don't know. And then why didn't Japan reach out to Adolf? Emperor Hirohito? I'm trying to think of who that was over there.
Hirohito was the emperor and Tojo was the top general.
Okay. So how come they didn't try to go, hey, man, let's have a conversation?
Things happened pretty fast because early in the war, they both had a stunning series of successes. So they got, like, the Japanese got all this, within days of Pearl Harbor, they had basically taken control of the entire Pacific. Hitler in 1940 all of a sudden owns all of Europe. And at that time, they just didn't really need to work together. And by the time it came time to work together, Hitler had already attacked the Russians, which was stupid. The Russians, meanwhile, over on the other side of Russia, by China, were attacking the Japanese in the last days of the war. And then so if, theoretically, let's say Hitler wins the war with the Soviet Union, and then he could sweep west, and then, he did want world domination, he may have attacked his Japanese allies because, remember, they're an island nation. They ended the rope with their supplies. They were out of steel and oil and rubber, all the things you need to wage war.
Yeah. Wow. What a story. Yes, Brian.
Important piece of information regarding Virginia Hall. There's been a movie in development for a couple of years, so who knows if these things will actually happen. But it's with Daisy Ridley, who we know from the Star Wars movies, the new Star Wars movies, and produced by J.J. Abrams about Virginia Hall.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Well, it's such a great story.
It'd be great if it came to fruition. Sometimes these things linger and whether.
Yeah, I mean, obviously played by a dude.
Yeah. No.
Dak Shepard, some other guy.
J.J. Abrams' first starring role is what I meant.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The book, Taking Paris, it is out as we speak. Let me hit LifeLock here. Massive potential leak involving Microsoft Power Apps may have exposed 38 million records, including Social Security numbers, addresses, and even COVID-19 vaccination status. It's important to understand how cybercrime and identity theft are affecting our lives every day. We put our on the internet and your finances and your credit. Good thing there's LifeLock. LifeLock helps detect a wide range of identity threats like your Social Security number for sale on the dark web. If they detect your information has potentially been compromised, they'll send you an alert. Protect yourself with LifeLock, right, Dawson?
No one can prevent all identity theft or monitor all transactions at all businesses, but you can help protect what's yours with LifeLock by Norton. Join now and save up to 25% off your first year by using promo code ADAM. Call 1-800-LifeLock or head to LifeLock.com and use promo code ADAM for 25% off.
All right, Martin, you want to hang out and do some news? We'll take a quick break.
News. Yep.
We'll come right back and do the news right after this.
Give me the news with Grad, news with Gina Grad, breaking viral, weird crime, protest, politics. Give me news with Gina Grad, stuff they saw on TMZ, Joe Biden, Kamala. Beat news with Gina Grad.
The news with Gina Grad.
Well, starting out with some unfortunate deaths, I'll throw in Willard Scott. He will be missed. But Michael K. Williams is probably a face you recognize if you don't know the name. He was found dead from a suspected drug overdose in his Brooklyn apartment, and we're looking at a picture of him. He was in The Wire is what everyone knows him from. Also, Boardwalk Empire and Lovecraft Country and all kinds of things. Sources say he was 54. He was found unconscious in his dining room of his luxury apartment with what appeared to be heroin on the kitchen table. So you're really sad. Great
Is this
actor.
a fentanyl thing, you think?
I have that story coming up next. We don't know. It seems unrelated.
Because there are a bunch of stand-up comedians that
Yep.
OD'd over the
I
weekend.
have that as well.
And there's a ton of fentanyl coming in from over the border. And every time I talk to Drew or anyone, they're just putting fentanyl in
Yeah.
everything, and everyone's ODing.
Well, so far we don't know, but they did say that he was found with what appeared to be heroin on the kitchen table. An interesting story. He has that really prominent scar on his forehead.
Yeah.
And he got that, I believe, in a bar fight. Many, many years ago. He was a dancer. He danced with like Madonna. Like he's really a triple threat. He got that in a bar fight. And then from what I understand, actually Teresa told me this part earlier, because of the scar, Tupac saw a Polaroid of him and, as he was going through actor stuff and like cast him in a movie because he had such an interesting look. And he's played the heavy in a million things and a really, really fine actor.
I'm the only one who's never seen The Wire.
Nope, I started it, couldn't get into it.
Really?
Yeah, and
Don't
Brian.
tell
I'm
Mike
obviously
August.
there with you.
Don't tell Mike
I don't
August.
care at
That's
all
his
about The
favorite
Wire.
show of all time.
Okay. Well, actually, Michael K. Williams is in 2 episodes of The Sopranos, so maybe some there. But what you were saying, yeah.
I was just going to say, The Wire's one of those shows. It's kind of like Radiohead, the band. You just say, oh, favorite show, why The Wire? Yeah. Not only do people think you know what you're doing, but they think you're kind of progressive too.
Yeah,
like,
they back off.
Yeah, they back off. Oh,
yeah.
That's a good choice.
Well, what you were referring to, comedian Fuquan Johnson and a couple others died reportedly overdosing on cocaine laced with fentanyl at a home in Venice on Saturday. While comedian and model Kate Quigley is in critical condition, the other 2 victims identified as Natalie Williamson and Enrico Colangeli. That's according to the LA County Coroner's Office. Police have not confirmed the cause of death, but say preliminary reports point to all 3 overdosing at a party.
Yeah, I think
Gotta know your dealer.
I think this fentanyl thing has added a new wrinkle to all the cocaine and heroin, any of the white powder stuff. I feel like the fentanyl is just, they're stepping on everything now. I don't think anyone knows what's in everything, and then everyone's just ODing.
Yeah, and I must be getting old and out of touch. I didn't think people were really doing coke anymore.
Oh, come on, Gina.
I really did. Coke?
You want to Carolla live show?
Yeah,
Like
Coke's
X
back.
and there's plenty of other recreational drugs. Yeah, I didn't
There's all
realize
Molly
that.
and bath salts these days.
That's right.
Come on, grow up.
I didn't.
I
being
guess
so
you,
naive.
I guess you. Wait a minute. Can you test Coke? I mean,
Yeah. On Cops they do it, or
Yeah.
like live PD, and they'll
the-
put it in the thing and shake it,
In the movie
Right.
Blow.
or that.
right.
Paul Rubens.
See what color it turns?
Can you go to Amazon and get a little kit? Like my grandfather used to do that with a pool. He had a pool and they
Yeah,
put a little
right.
beaker in
Sure.
and he'd shake it up and it turned purple.
Yeah,
It
check the
needed more
pH balance.
fentanyl
Then it
or
was time to
whatever it
party,
was.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'll check on
Because
that.
we're that well, you could not do drugs.
Yeah.
But
It's such a fucking Hollywood move. Next thing you know, is we're going to a party. Is there a rapid test there? Why, you afraid of COVID? No.
Coke.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, we got to do a
Rapid
Coke
test.
rapid test.
And that's like the thing coming in from Mexico.
What I've heard from talking to people I talk to is the Chinese have set up labs in Mexico. The border's pretty wide open, and a lot of fentanyl is rolling in from Mexico.
I have a
It's
question.
a cartel thing.
With the,
Okay, so I have a question about fentanyl. Do people want fentanyl?
No, I don't think they want fentanyl. I think it's like that imitation crab that they would put
with
in
a comedy
sushi.
tag,
You know what
yeah.
I mean? But not as bad, obviously. It's imitation crab.
But like, do you get high? I really know nothing about it. Do you get high specific? Like, can people become addicted to
what is in
fentanyl
the
without
full-
dying?
I think Chris can look it up, or Carl O'Reilly.
yeah.
No, I think what they do is they go, here is this imitation crab. It's not nearly as expensive as the real cocaine or the real heroin. And if we mix it in with a little bit of the real stuff, you'll get the same euphoric whatever.
'cause it's
You'll
an
get the
opioid.
high.
Okay.
But then everyone is ODing because it's 50 times more powerful than what it was. And then so people are thinking, well, I'm going to do my usual amount of heroin or my usual amount of cocaine, but what they don't realize is it's fentanyl, or a lot of it's fentanyl, and now they're ODing.
I see.
That's how I have
the
it.
Chinese are going to Mexico to put with the idea of killing Americans.
No,
Making
making
money.
money.
I thought they were trying to like.
No.
I mean
that's
fentanyl in the supply. I'm like,
Fentanyl's the new
wow.
baby laxative.
Okay.
Yeah. So the cartels don't have the technology to do a lab. I mean, China's China. They got the technology, so the Chinese do the lab, and then they make the stuff, and then the cartels are in charge of bringing it over.
I don't like it.
It doesn't sound
That's
promising.
not great.
Not
Yeah.
great. The federal unemployment program that extended benefits for those out of work and added $300 per week to benefit checks has expired. That is estimated to affect around 9 million people. Many states still have eviction bans, though the federal eviction ban has been thrown out by the Supreme Court. SNAP, the nutritional benefits, they increased by an average of $36 a month. Student loan moratorium lasts till February. So you don't have to make a payment and it won't increase your balance until February. The enhanced child tax credits are in place through the end of the year. But employers are very hopeful that by ending the enhanced benefits, people will be lured back to the workforce.
Well, I hear there's like 10 million open openings.
Yeah, there was a one post that went viral. I think it was a pizza place that said like something like hiring literally today. Like, come on in and we'll put an apron
you
on
work.
you. Yeah.
Maybe it's just me, but does it make sense to you, like when we're talking about like, well, there's the job and the recovery and jobs and, COVID, or like they're talking about like mail-in ballots because of COVID, people may not want to go out to the polls or whatever.
Actually
it's like,
made it easier.
What year is it? Like, I feel like I was just on a ferry coming back from Catalina. I'm getting on an airplane. I'm going to Detroit. I know that's me, but as I look around, the freeways are crowded, the malls are crowded, you turn on a college football game, there's 85,000 people in the stands. This thing of like people aren't ready to get back to work. Like they're not, because of COVID, they're not going out of the house. First off, fuck them. They don't want to work. If turn on the TV, the fucking college stadiums are packed, the airport's packed. Like, what do you mean you're not ready? Then that's your own personal decision.
Yes. And guess who else went back to work? Dr. Jill Biden.
Ooh, what's she doing?
Well, she's an educator. So if she can go back, I guess the educators
We can all
go
go back. Yes.
Are you familiar with Lil Uzi?
Lil Uzi
Anybody?
Vert?
Yeah, that's the one.
Is he the son of Mac 10?
It would make sense, but I don't think so.
Mac 10 was on Loveline about 25 years ago.
Oh, maybe.
So it makes sense that he would give birth to little Uzi.
It's true.
I'm just doing the rapper math.
You're doing rapper
there.
math. It's sound. I'm going to show you a picture of him. You tell me.
Lil Uzi Vert.
You tell me if there's anything odd about his appearance.
Well, he has a jewel stuck to his
Didn't he have
forehead.
the diamond
doesn't-
encrusted in his head?
You're both kind of right. It's not a jewel stuck to his forehead. It's a $24 million pink diamond surgically implanted into his forehead. Now, what would be your biggest fear if you were crowd surfing and you were Lil Uzi and the people were manhandling you?
I would assume they'd be going for that diamond.
Indeed. So
Makes cunnilingus hard.
apparently, he was doing some crowd surfing at a music festival in Miami in July. Someone yanked it out of his head.
Oh, wow.
The pink diamond reportedly worth $24 million. It was surgically implanted
Hold on
into
a
his
second,
face.
first off.
Yeah.
He's got it valued at $24 million. This seems insane. That first
I
off,
couldn't agree more.
I'll bet you. Well, first off, I don't know if he has it insured. Secondly,
like to think
I
so.
don't know how you insure something you wear on your head, stuck to your head.
Mary Hart can do her legs.
Yeah, like I'll give you an example. I have expensive race cars. They are insured, but if you want to race them, they're not insured.
Oh, I
The
see.
insurance company goes, hey, little Uzi, if you want to go crowd surfing in Miami, not insured for that. You want to buy the diamond, put it in a safe in your
Very
closet,
good
we
point.
shall insure it for that. If you're going to wear it on your head and go clubbing, no, it is not insured for that. And I will bet you he's valued it at $24 million.
I was going to say, that's a reported value. The one you send to the...
But even if it was $4 million,
Right.
it's insane.
Still a lot to be attached. Yes.
So, yeah, he had that ripped out of his face. Not to worry. He said he's feeling good.
Do you
and
think
he's-
little
yeah.
Uzi has to... Do you think with that giant Hope Diamond hot glued to his forehead, he's allowed to have conversations with like Mrs. Little Uzi who, like Chris, got her computer or purse stolen because
sure.
she left it on the passenger seat. And
Yeah.
he's going, you never. We're at a Cheesecake Factory in Burbank.
Where's my outside? I can see
You
the car.
don't leave the purse. It's right in plain sight.
high
This is
alert at all
on you.
times.
This is on you.
Yeah.
All
Might
right?
as well just advertise. I have a laptop on the
Don't
front
make
seat.
me take this gem out of my head and throw it at you. That's foolhardy.
You're absolutely
This isn't
right.
the thief's fault. This is your fault for leaving it in plain sight.
I don't want to victim blame.
Mm-hmm.
He did get the diamond back, and now he has replaced the diamond with a sensible barbell.
Oh, barbell.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So Lil Uzi was crowd serving. Someone snatched it from his forehead.
Ripped it out of his face.
Now we got it back.
I don't know.
All right.
I mean, I'd like to think that there was some security watching the crowd surfing, but yeah, that's kind of on him as far as the insurance company goes. I think you're probably right.
It's a damn shame you don't know much about Marvel or the Avengers because he's a dead ringer for Vision.
Oh, is he? Oh, that's
Get the Infinity Stone, put it right in his
Right.
head.
The guy from WandaVision.
Yes.
Oh, that's
Paul
funny.
Bettany.
That's Paul Bettany?
That's Paul Bettany.
Wow.
Can I say this about the face tattoo?
Yeah, he upped the game.
He's got a lot of, but it's a little hard to decipher what they are.
Yeah.
But here's what I'm saying. I feel like people put more thought and effort and precision into an ass cheek tattoo than they do to the one on their face. I mean, it's like a lot of face tattoos I'm seeing these days, shoot pretty haphazard.
Just
you know what I mean?
scrolling across.
Like if you're giving me an ankle tattoo, I'm like, dude, knock yourself out, but I got socks.
Yeah.
But when you're doing a face tattoo, I'd have a lot like artist renderings and let's do a computer graphic.
Mock-ups.
See, there's a
Can you guys
mock-up.
grab Post Malone's picture?
Yeah, I'm just, he's a good example too of like,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like a ton of effort is being put into this.
They
or
all
thought.
seem like tattoos you got on a dare.
Right. He has tats. Some of them just seem like under his right eye looks like a dreidel, Gina. I don't know.
Oh,
It's
he
probably
converted?
not.
That's going to be risky because you're not supposed to get tattoos if you're Jewish. He won't be able to be buried in a Jewish cemetery. Mm-hmm. Oh,
Yeah.
see, look at Post Malone.
He's got,
It says stay away right
He
on his
doesn't look
forehead.
like Vision at all.
he's got a sword and a
He's got
hammer,
Some playing cards.
some playing cards, a Playboy bunny.
Yep, a heart.
By the way, is there a chick under 30 who's even going to get the Playboy bunny
No, that's
thing anymore?
good
That's
Like,
a thing of the
I'm
past.
saying, like people, the shit people have on their upper arm that you could cover with a short sleeve shirt are putting more time and thought into than a face tattoo.
You're right. And if you look closely, you can see under the beard and hair, he's tattooed.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
All right.
And I've heard he's a nice guy, so stay away is a mixed message on his face. Mm-hmm. Okay. Kanye West hoping to sell a line of homeware products under his name. TMZ reports that a holding company owned by Kanye has filed a trademark to put Yeezy's name all over home goods, shower curtains, wall hangings, towels, placemats, blankets, you name it. Could result in Kanye competing against his estranged wife. She has now trademarked KKW Home, which means that they're taking this fight out of court, doing battle at Target.
Was O'Reilly got a lot of this stuff on in his estate?
He's got
Easy
a lot
Towel.
of face tattoos, though.
Oh, O'Reilly does. I was just wearing
there's
makeup
the
when I
makeup,
see him.
yeah.
Makeup.
Yeah, my God, what? I don't know. It's a weird, God, it's such a weird world, but it's kind of coming full circle because, I guess when I was growing up, it would always be celebrities pitching, cigarettes, booze, and stuff like that, cars.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's just you make it all, you control it all.
Yep.
I mean, what an empire! I
Bed
think
skirts.
those two kids may get back together.
Really?
Well, I watch TMZ pretty religiously, and she shows up at every one of his record unveiling things.
Didn't she show up in like a wedding dress?
And in a wedding dress, something's, well, maybe I'm just taking the bait, but that's a weird thing to do with your ex, right?
You couldn't be more right. Is this just a ploy for the last go out with a bang season of the Keeping Up with the Kardashians?
It's over.
Oh, then I don't know.
I mean, I have no idea.
Well, is there first off, is there anything we put past the Kardashians
No.
and or
That's
Kanye
our
in terms of
fault.
publicity?
No.
Like, right?
I will say this, and it's not a positive thing, but I was disappointed. Christy watches the Kardashians, and I'm vaguely aware of it. And I was like, oh, the last season, they're going to focus a lot on mental health and Kanye West. Nary a mention.
No, I think that was
Nary a mention.
I think we did a story about that a while ago. That was basically the deal. We will do another season, but we are not talking about
Which is
Kanye.
sad because they could have probably done for the idiots to watch that show and Christy. They could have done some good where they're talking about mental health. If you're suffering from this or this seems like someone you
but that
know,
would be an admission of him having a mental health issue.
so sad.
I would imagine.
All right, let's do one more.
Oh, good.
Well,
Yeah.
let's talk about Trevor Moore because
Is there new information?
Well, there is, and it's so weird. All right, so you know me, I don't know how the computer works, right?
That is correct.
But I was listening, so I was so yesterday I got up and I was looking at podcasts, and I saw Carolla Classics. That's our best of podcast, and I was looking on it. And it said Trevor Moore from 2000 and
We did two of them. We did one from 2013 and one from 2015.
I didn't know what it was based on, anything. We never had Chris and I never had a conversation about it or anything like that. And I was kind of looking at it sort of the night before, and I was like, I'd like to hear what Trevor Moore. He's a comedian who just passed away
Very suddenly.
Very
Sort
suddenly.
of mysteriously.
in an accident. And then I got up this morning and I was just going to Google and said, trending at the top is Trevor Moore. And then I was like, wait a minute, does that have something to do with me looking on does my computer know that I was looking at it on my phone?
I mean, it
Because why is
does,
Trevor
but-
Moore trending? And because it came out,
Right.
I guess over the weekend, that it was an accident.
what happened?
And we just heard it was an accident initially. So Trevor Moore passed away, what was he, 41 or something? He was young.
He was just on our show.
He was on a show
couple
two
months ago,
weeks.
right?
He was on 2 weeks earlier, and then
God.
he passed away. And they just kept saying an
Yeah.
accident.
That
and
his wife found him in the backyard.
I just got accident
Okay.
as much as I got, and we were sort of, everyone's like, suicide?
Yeah,
like, why won't they tell us what happened?
They wouldn't say anything. The only thing that was released was just the word accident. It was just an accident. So I mean, we all. I mean, personally, I thought, oh, that's drugs or something. I mean, that's so weird how they just kept that under wraps until it kind of faded away.
Yeah, I'm looking right now, and this is from today on TMZ. So I don't know if this is what you saw or not, but it says, according to TMZ, we're told cops believe the comedic actor fell from the upstairs balcony, suffering head trauma when he landed. However, it's unclear if he fell accidentally or intentionally jumped. There was no suicide note found, but alcohol may have been contributed. We're told empty bottles were found in Trevor's house.
Yeah, and I was saying, I don't know how, it was out here. I don't know how old the house is, but back in the day, railings were kind of low.
He's a lanky fella.
And he's
too.
kind of tall.
Very tall guy.
And as a guy who's 6'2", if you go around the old school 32-inch high railing, you feel like that ain't going to hold me
Yeah.
if I have a couple of pops and lean over a little bit.
Well, and-
now they're either 36 or 42. Maybe it's even 42. They
But even
moved them up to
36 is not-
36, and then they probably up at 42 now. But the point is I'm ruling out suicide because that's a weird way to kill yourself.
Yeah.
Second story.
Yeah.
I mean, go
You could
to the
break your
top
leg.
of the Chrysler building.
Well, and this makes more sense when they first said that they reported that his wife found him collapsed in the backyard. Like, well, did he trip over the sprinkler? But if he fell from a height, now the story's starting to come together, I guess.
Yes.
So sad.
So sad. Such a nice guy.
Do you want a sort of funny story to bring
Yes.
us out? Okay. Where did it go? Let's do this one. Okay, here we go. Tesla vehicles come equipped with a feature that could protect drivers from being scammed, and I'm so glad we have this on record now. Fox News reports that a man in Louisiana was arrested after he claimed a Tesla hit him in a parking lot, left him injured, he was writhing, he was rolling around. Those cameras record, which I did not realize, and we have the footage. I'll show you in a second. When Slidell police officers reviewed the Tesla footage, it became apparent the guy was lying, staged the entire thing. It's kind of Benny Hill-ish, and I'll show you. There's no sound, though. The incident happened Friday about 4. We're watching it now. You're going to see a guy kind of walk up to it and go, oh, God, like an old Life Alert commercial. And he's just kind of rolling and sad, and he even puts his little foot up on the bumper for flair.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, the cameras roll on it. It's not just showing you on the screen what's happening. It's recording
Yes.
what's on the screen.
Which I don't think Arthur Bates Jr., 47-year-old from Louisiana, knew. So he finally admitted it. He's facing 1 count of false swearing with the intent to cause an emergency response. because they called out the fire department. They called out the EMTs. And it's so funny when you see him just sort of gingerly walk up and go, oh, and fall backwards.
Yeah, I'm guessing he said this was Louisiana.
Yes.
Like, if you're in Louisiana and someone is driving a Tesla, that's a rich guy.
Oh, sure.
Because you forget, you go between La Cañada and Malibu like I do. It's Tesla,
all Tesla.
central.
Yeah.
But when you hit the road and you go to Appleton, Wisconsin, you see, I see 1,000 times more Buicks than I do Teslas. Now, here it's 0 Buicks and all Teslas, but it sort of depends where you're hanging out.
Very true.
So you go to Louisiana, you see a Tesla, you go, that guy's fully
Jackpot.
covered. Right,
Yeah.
jackpot, yeah.
So let that be a lesson to you scammers. Those cameras record, and you're going to look real dumb when you just gingerly fall down like a sleeping princess.
It's not only that, it's everything that he hates about lay people, which is your average 41-year-old chick who's doing the goat yoga and who gets a massage but has to hydrate because the toxins are being released from her body, knows way more about toxins than Dr. Drew does.